about a wide receiver, another player inside the top 100 that people are just too overhyped about, and I'm not really feeling the same vibes. Um, and I'm just going to go for it. I'm sorry. I'm going to go for it. That's Calvin Ridley, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars. We were just talking about ADP. I love using NFC average draft position. I just think it's so valuable to just determine where these guys are currently being drafted through competitive draft leagues and all of those other things that come into play. Where do you think Calvin Ridley is being drafted right now, Jacob, without looking at the show notes?
Okay.
But also don't be too off and make us look bad.
No.
And obviously he's overranked, right? So I think about it.
I'm thinking he's being drafted as a top 15 wide receiver.
Sure, and you'd probably be right. He's drafted right around 4.4, which makes him wide receiver. Right in that range. He hasn't played football in nearly 2 years, and I know you can't deny great talent, and we're not going to talk about the reasons why he hasn't played football. But, guys, it's June and July in fantasy football. You know the one thing you just don't believe in July and June of fantasy football season? You don't believe anything because it's everybody out there scraping to put pieces together. It's beat writers looking to put up their next hype pieces to get views. It's so early in the offseason. Training camp is literally a week away. And sure, if we start to hear that he's doing great things in training camp, then obviously these things can be adjusted and my views can change. But I don't know. I liked what the Jacksonville Jaguars did last year. You know, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones were both good wide receivers last year. Christian Kirk finished as the wide receiver 12. Zay Jones was the wide receiver 26. That's 2 top 30 wide receivers. And I get it, right? What's the next logical step for this team? Let's add some more pieces. Let's make it even more deadly. Sure, insert Calvin Ridley, who's going into his age 28, 29 season. I understand that. But I just don't expect him to be as acclimated. You're drafting him as a top 15 wide receiver. You're expecting him to put up wide receiver 1 numbers. I don't know if he's necessarily going to do that for you. And a team that already had some established guys, especially Zay Jones, and look at all that money they paid Christian Kirk to. Those guys aren't just going to get phased out of the offense. If one's more likely to, it's going to be Zay Jones, of course. But I don't see a world where he just comes in and demands targets right away. You still have awesome backfield options with Travis Etienne as well. And then, of course, you have dynasty quarterback, number 4 or 5 for us, Trevor Lawrence. So this team is going to be good. But is it going to be good in the sense that Calvin Ridley is going to be a top 10 wide receiver? Because you're drafting him as if he is one right now, and I just don't think that's the case. There are plenty of other positional players going around that 4.4, middle, early 4th round that I'd rather take than Calvin Ridley. And some of these are real deep takes, but I'm going to go with the sure things first. I'd rather have Drake London, number 1 wide receiver on a team that's not going to throw the ball a lot. I'd rather have Brandon Ayuk, number 1, probably number 2, but the best wide receiver on the San Francisco 49ers of a team who's probably not going to throw the ball a lot. They're all currently being drafted behind him, along with Juju Smith-Schuster, who as of right now, the Patriots seem to be out of the DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes. But Juju Smith-Schuster, another number 1 on our team that may not throw the ball a lot. These are all guys that I'd want instead of Calvin Ridley. Other positional players, his quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, going around the 4th round, right around there. Justin Fields, if you want to reach for those early quarterbacks. Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon, if you decide to go 0 RB in the beginning of your drafts, those guys are solid RB1 options. Like if you're going like 0 RB up into the 4th round, or they might be your RB2 in that situation. I think both of those guys are good. And listen, devil's advocate says he's playing with Trevor Lawrence, a really good quarterback who's going to make him better. What do you mean make him better? He was already great. He's going to come in and continue to be great. I totally agree with that perspective, but I think there are a lot of other things going against him. And those are my thoughts of why I think Calvin Ridley is just a little too overhyped for my taste at the 404. And I'm passing on him in most drafts until I feel his ranking is properly adjusted. Jacob, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, well said, man. I think, okay, so Fantasy Pros has him as wide receiver 20. And to me, even that's a little risky. Like, we have no idea how this is going to shake out. It's a lottery ticket, in my opinion. And do you want to bank, like, basically you're drafting him as your wide receiver 2, unless you go 3 RBs and then take Calvin Ridley as a wide receiver 1 or something, or let's say you go 2 RBs, a tight end, Calvin Ridley, right? Like, I don't feel comfortable with that. I would feel comfortable as my wide receiver 3, maybe, and like you're not going to be able to get him as that. So there's just too many unknown variables. Like, what if he just lost it? Like,
well, let's hope he doesn't just lose it. But you said Fantasy Pros has him as the wide receiver 20. Even then, that's like what? That's a middle of the road wide receiver 2. I can respect that as his ceiling. I don't know. There's just something like in my bones.
I'm taking Brandon Ayuk over him all day, and not just because I'm a Niners fan, but Brandon Ayuk is an ascending player. He had his best season last year. He's playing for a contract year. If Brock Purdy's the quarterback, he was playing really well with Brock Purdy. So, and they have Ayuk as wide receiver 31. Like, so just to give some perspective, like
absolute filth.
We know what Ayuk's role is going to be, and we know he's guaranteed. Like, it's guaranteed. So it's interesting to see with Calvin Ridley. Look, here's the thing, though. Calvin Ridley has a higher ceiling than Ayuk because Ayuk is at best
the third option.
Well, he's the number 1 wide receiver option, but you got CMC catching a lot of passes. You got Kittle, who's going to be operating as a receiver at times, especially more so with Brock Purdy. And obviously Debo's going to get his. Like, there's a lot of mouths to feed. Ridley could be the number 1 target in Jacksonville and end up being a wide receiver 1. It's in the realm of possibilities, but like, it's a risk. So I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Sorry, I can't have a heated debate and disagree.
Jacob, not everything has to be a heated debate. Sometimes we can just embrace each other's thoughts, come together as one, and hold each other tight. But let us know your thoughts down in the comments. What do you think about Calvin Ridley? Too high, too low this early in the offseason?